had a pita bread, I've got my water, let's do this. Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This morning I was having some thoughts about YouTube drama and storytelling, and I thought they were interesting thoughts, so seeing as it's my channel, I thought I'd make a video about it. Over the last couple of days, I have been following the current YouTube drama situation. There are important things that are happening in that drama. This video is not about the drama, so there are plenty of videos if you care about what's going on. But I'm also aware that there are way more important things happening in the world. To be honest, it's just been a great escape watching something that I don't really have any investment in and that I don't care about also going up in flames along with all of the things that I do care about. I'm a human being, the schadenfreude is real. But this morning I kind of was just thinking and musing about everything that's been going on and looking at it at a wider scale, and I think it's just been really interesting watching the story unfold in the way it has, in the way that YouTube stories and YouTube drama does. And also, I think it's been a really interesting study of intention and wants and objectives and stuff. When you step back, it's kind of fascinating. And also, with theatre not being a thing at the moment, and many of us in our industry potentially looking at other platforms in which to tell stories, I think there is a structure and some lessons that can be learnt from this situation that can be applied to created narratives, if that makes sense. So I just want to talk about it. I hope you enjoy it. It's very different to what I usually do, but yeah, let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is narrative structure, because like I said, it's completely different to anything. I think the thing that the narrative structure of YouTube stories unfolding is most similar to promenade theatre. So things like Alice in Wonderland at the Vault or War of the Worlds, I think as well. I don't remember the venue War of the Worlds was at, where you let audiences into the space and they see scenes in a seemingly random order. I don't know how cultivated that is in the making of the show, but the episodic nature of that and the separation of you're just seeing this scene in its own context as you're seeing it. Of course, that context adds on to the scenes that you see after that, but by and large, like, this scene is in isolation and then this scene is in isolation, I think is the most close to how YouTube drama and scandals unfold. But there is a key difference in that there's kind of three tiers of groups of people. So you have the first tier, which are like the lead characters. So they would be the people who are involved in the drama. Then you have the second tier, which I would call the secondary characters. So they would be like drama and commentary channels who are creating content, but are also audiences to the lead characters. The drama and commentary channels can only create content after watching the content of the lead characters. And then you have the third level, which are the audience proper, I guess, who don't create content in terms of videos because they're just watching everything, but also comment and interact with the story and the drama that's going on through commenting on videos, liking videos, tweeting, retweeting, those kinds of things, which you don't get in any other kind of storytelling medium, I don't think. In terms of watching a narrative unfold, I don't think there's any way of storytelling where everyone is kind of the audience, because even the lead characters are the audience because they're watching the other lead characters and reacting and creating their content based on what they see by and large. So this mixing of audience and participants, I think, is really interesting. Also, these secondary characters or drama channels in this instance, they're steering the third tier just audience category if that audience chooses to be steered, because also the audience proper can decide who they do and do not watch and do not listen to. I've participated in this. There have been some drama channels, because I haven't been watching the main videos because I just don't want to give these people my money. They all seem like terrible people. I don't want to give them my money or my views, but I've been watching the commentary channels, and there are some commentary channels I'll get like a little way through their video and I'm like, I don't really agree with what you're saying and how you're saying it, so I'll click off. The audience has so much agency over how they take in this story. The fact that I have the agency to not take in the main players and what they're creating, I can just look at the secondary people. There will be people who just watch the main players and don't watch the drama channels or any of the commentary on it. There'll be people who pick and choose. So the agency of the audience is also something that I don't think you really get. I mean, obviously there's agency in that the audience can choose to go to see a show or not, but once you're there, unless you just decide to leave completely, you've got to watch the whole thing, right? You can't be like, oh, I'll watch scene 1 and scene 5, but I'm not really fussed about scene 4 because it has this character I don't like in it, so I'm just not going to watch scene 4. That's not how it works. Which again, I just think is a very interesting concept if we as creatives and storytellers can utilize it in some way. I'm not sure, I don't know why I picked up my pen. I'm not sure how you do that. One idea that I did have is if people are wanting to create content for online and use the online space. This is a slight tangent, but I think one of the things about being like, we'll just take theatre and put it online, if we're going to have to go to online platforms, we might as well do the things online that we couldn't do on stage. So I guess you could create a story where the director of that story talks to and directs the actors individually. Everyone knows that this character is going to drop the first thing that catalyzes the rest of the online drama. Drama in terms of cultivated story, the online piece that this group of creatives is creating. Individuals know their motivations, they know what their relationships to the other characters, but they don't know what the other characters are doing behind the scenes. They do not know that this person's motivation is this, my motivation is that, they're going to do this thing and say this thing, and I'm going to say this thing and this thing. All they've got is the facts, and then they create the video that that character would make, and then once the first video from the initiating character drops, it is up to the individual actors' characters on when they drop their part of the narrative. I think that would be a really interesting piece. I mean, if I can think of a good enough story, I might try and write that, but if anyone else wants to write that, just credit me please and give me money. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting narrative structure that you could not do really anywhere else. Bearing in mind that obviously this is not all cultivated, like I said, but I just think it is really interesting, and I think it is something that would be worth exploration if people have the time and the inclination to do it. So that's my thoughts on that. Again, I picked up my pen, I don't know why. Just like that pen. The other thing I want to talk about, which is probably kind of obvious but still really fascinating, is the character analysis. These people are insane. There's so much to dig into. As a character study, it's a goldmine, it really is. This whole situation, and probably situations before, probably situations after, is a masterclass in wants and intentions. I personally really like wants and intentions. I think there's something really concrete that you can control, as opposed to relying solely on emotion. You know, there are things you can do to contrive emotion, emotion memory exercises, things like that, but it's very volatile, and I think focusing solely on emotion can make it come across as contrived and false. And I think it doesn't leave you room for the fact that emotions are very complex. The exact same situation, you can react emotionally in 2 different ways. Whereas wants and intentions, you as a person or a character that's been written, they know what they want. And if it's not in the text, you as an actor can decide what that character wants. If things happen that help you gain what you want, or if things happen that stop you getting what you want, that is going to instill some kind of emotional response regardless of what's going on. Because if you really want something and something stops it, you're gonna get emotional. Real life example, all of us working in theatre, what we want is to make theatre. That's what we want. That's our intention, that's our objective, whatever, if you're gonna use actor textbook language. Everything that is happening right now is stopping us getting what we want. As a result, there's a lot of emotional reaction happening. You can tell by the change in my voice as I'm filming this part of the video. There is a lot of emotions running high. When you are working with wants and intentions, emotion by and large comes naturally. You might need a bit of finessing if a particular emotional response is required in the grand scheme of the piece that you're involved in, but there's always going to be an emotional response with that. And this whole situation is a masterclass in that, it really is. Just gonna keep the pen in my hand because it's just the pen. Now, obviously me as a person talking about this, or we as an audience, can only speculate on the full wants and intentions of these characters, because all we can see is the final cultivated video that is being put out for public consumption. So it's not the same as if you're rehearsing a show, like I said, you've got the entire script in front of you, you know what's going on with everyone else's character. And even as an audience, usually a play or a drama will give the audience insight into the behind the scenes decisions that are going on. But having said that, whilst the full intentions aren't clear, I think it's easy to pick apart and see what's happening. And I think the big thing that situations like this show is how actions taken because of intentions and wants can still be misconstrued by the audience. And I'm going to use some examples from this drama. The first example I want to use is in Tati's video, which was the latest YouTube video in this whole thing. She read off a script. This analysis is very, very simplified for the sake of this video and, you know, life. But we can assume that Tati's want with this video, her objective in this video, is to not be blamed and for the audience, us the viewers, to forgive her and her part in the whole scandal from last year. Her counter objective is to not implicate herself, because in her video she made it fairly clear that she's thinking of pursuing legal action, and if she implicated herself in the video, that would make that harder for her to do. So she wants to be absolved from blame and she wants to be forgiven, but she cannot fully implicate herself in her part in what happened. Those are her objectives and her counter objectives, right? And so she decided to read off of a script that was okayed by her lawyers. The result of that is that some of the audience who saw that video felt that because she read off of a script, she was being disingenuous and therefore were less inclined to forgive her. Therefore, the act of her reading off a script, for some members of the audience, stopped her from achieving her objective, which was to gain their forgiveness. Do you see what I mean? The fact that actions can be taken in different ways by different people, I think is sometimes forgotten by actors, partly because that's what directors are for. Directors are there to see the bigger picture, and so when crafting a narrative, it's the director who's thinking about what do we want the audience to get from this piece, and steer the actor into making acting choices that facilitate that final product and what we want the audience to think and to feel. There are some directors who are really good at steering directors in that way. There are some directors that are bad at steering directors that way, but that is their job essentially. So I think as actors, we partly forget that because usually there's someone else to do that kind of thinking for us, but also because we're people and people forget that things can be misconstrued. And, you know, even the most diligent actors who always think on that macro scale for themselves, sometimes you just forget and something slips past you until someone mentions it and you're like, oh yeah, right? But it is important to keep that in mind, especially because at the moment, we're in a situation where a lot of us may be thinking that we're going to have to make and produce our own work to put online to keep us performing until we can perform on stages again. Especially those of us like me, I don't have a show reel, so it's going to be very difficult for me to get screen acting work at the moment, I would imagine. If you're putting up, not even your own writing, but if you're rehearsing a monologue to put up on YouTube or on Instagram, as actors we're not used to necessarily having to think on what do we want our audience to think and feel, what is our intention to our audience. We usually think of what is our intention to other characters. I think it's very important, if we're going to be making our own work for dissemination online, to remember that our audience is going to be the other character. And even if we're collaborating, like if you're actors all living in the same house, so you're like, well, let's do an online podcast radio play or whatever it is. If you're directing yourselves, you can't just focus on what's happening between the characters. You've got to think about what is the overall effect we want what we're making to have on the audience.
Hiya, me from the editing room. Just to clarify, I don't mean that you always have to be aiming to persuade your audience of one thing or another. You can want your audience to just observe and witness the thing that you are doing and not pass judgment on it. That is also a valid choice. I think the important thing is to make the choice and be aware that by making that choice, your piece as a whole will have more clarity and will be more likely to achieve whatever it is you choose to achieve, aim to achieve, if that makes sense. Cool. Back to the video. Bye.
Going back to the drama, an extreme example of what can happen when you don't think about this is Shane Dawson's Instagram live that he made in response to Tati's video. It's all very convoluted. If Shane Dawson had thought for one moment about his audience, because his audience, he must know, he's got, again, I don't care, I don't know how many subscribers he's not, but I know it's in the multiple millions, like the tens of millions. With tens of millions of subscribers, a quick moment of thought could let you know that if you put up an Instagram live, it's not just going to be your Instagram followers who click on Instagram live who will see it. People will screenshot it and record it and post it everywhere, especially with the controversy that is happening at the moment. People will share that to a wider audience than your Instagram followers. With that in mind, the fact that he didn't take a moment to think about what do I want the audience to get from this Instagram live, it was completely reactionary. There was no thought about wants or intentions. Even I don't think there was any thought of wants and intentions just for his Instagram followers or just for him needing to vent. I think it was literally like, I just need to vent. He didn't think about what he wanted and the best way to achieve that, because the best way to achieve whatever he may have wanted was not that video, that's for sure. And whilst the Shane Dawson Instagram live is an extreme example of what happens when you don't think about what you want your audience to take away from what you're saying or what you're performing or what you're posting, the repercussions can be similar. In Shane Dawson's case, at best, people came away being like, what on earth was that? At worst, people came away hating him more because he said some very awful things. Again, if you're going to script what you're doing, you can easily avoid that. But either way, for all intents and purposes, he ended up saying things that people thought were absolutely disgusting. What he did was a detriment to what his overarching want is, because I'm pretty sure his want is to stop losing subscribers and for people to like him again. In a similar way, you need to think about what you want to make sure that when you're creating something, everything that you're putting on the page or in the audio clip or on video is working towards that want and that objective. And this is not just, I think, for creating content for online consumption. I think this is also in terms of social media as well. I know in the UK theatre space, Jamie Boddy and Jason Broderick, two really great guys, I'll link their stuff below because they give excellent advice. They talk a lot about the importance of social media and they say similar things. You need to know what your social media is for. It's still thinking and having a clear intention. And as actors, again, if we want to put our own stuff out there, we need to get used to thinking in that way, I think. It's definitely given me a lot of food for thought as someone who is thinking about what I want to do and how I can take agency over what I'm doing in this terrible situation. But yeah, I just think that is a very interesting takeaway from this drama as well. Very, very clearly demonstrated by these two players, but also I think everyone in this situation that is an absolute mess. So yeah.
A few moments later.
Me, as I was editing, had another thought that was too long to do as a little insert editor bit, so I'm just gonna add this in here. Another thought I've been having whilst thinking about this whole drama is how much it demonstrates the fact that no one in their life, in their self-narrative, sees themselves as the villain. Literally no one. You can see this in all of the online interaction and discourse that has happened both during this situation and historically with all of these people. Shane's most recent apology video, Shane's Instagram live, Tati's video, even taking into account the fact that she's trying to not implicate herself. Jeffrey's behaviour throughout his life and his online persona. Everyone sees their lives and the actions that happen around them as them being the protagonist and everyone else working against them if, you know, if negative things happen. And I think this is, again, a textbook demonstration of what we are taught in acting classes, is that characters, even if on the page, just objectively, you can read a script and you know that your character is the bad guy, that character doesn't think they're the bad guy, or doesn't know that they're the bad guy. And I think it's a trap that we as actors can often fall into. And I think, depending on your experience, directors and writers can fall into this trap a bit as well, in that we play what we know is going to happen. If we know the outline of our story, we write the bad guys as really, really bad. If we know that we want the audience to think this of this character and this of another character, we will direct our actors to play those characters textbook in that way. If we're actors and we know the outcome of our story, like we know that our character is going to lose a loved one, or we know that our character is going to kill someone, we play the end of the play at the beginning of the play. And we can't do that because our characters do not know what they are going to do. They see themselves, if anything negative happens, by and large, as victims of circumstance. And it takes a very strong character to acknowledge when we are the villain in this episode of our life. And I think even then, I don't think it's about people seeing themselves as the villain necessarily. I think it's about people rising up and overcoming the shame that they feel of having done bad things. I think even the people who do bad things and own up to them, they don't see themselves as the bad guy, they see themselves as flawed, which is healthy. I'm not saying people need to see themselves as the bad guy. Maybe Jeffree Star does. I think that's just an important thing to remember. We as actors might know our character is the villain, but the character doesn't know that. Textbook case in point, this whole thing to me. So those are my thoughts on the current YouTube drama and how it pertains to storytelling and intentions and making your own work and lots of other random acting and theatre related things. I hope you found this video interesting. It was very different to what I usually post, but if you did like it, please consider liking and subscribing. It would really help me to grow my channel. Also follow me on social media. Twitter and Instagram are linked down below. Twitter tends to be more political. Instagram tends to be photos of me playing ukulele, if you're interested in that. Also, I will leave links down below to all of the things. So Write to Them, which is a website where you can write to your MP. If you care about theatre and you have a permanent address, so you have an MP to write to, please, please, please write to your MP and tell them that they need to give theatre help. Please, please do it. Also, if you want to write to them and say Black Lives Matter, do that as well. Also, if you want to tweet, what was his name? Oliver, I don't even know his name, he's that ineffectual. If you want to tweet Oliver Dowden, I think his name is, and Rishi Sunak and say help theatre, please feel free to do that as well. Yeah, that would all be great. All of that said, stay tuned for more theatre content from a UK perspective, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye friends!